Huh. Okay, so how do we sail downwind under the jib and main sails? Stay tuned to find out. Non-spinnaker racing is competitive, so how do we get an edge sailing downwind with a whisker pole? Putting your genoa out to windward with the whisker pole on broad reaches and runs allows it to develop more power in undisturbed air. The tighter the angle, the longer the pole should be, especially when using an overlapping genoa. When sailing dead downwind, the pole can be pulled aft and shortened. Non-spinnaker divisions in distance races and jib and main evening races represent a growing segment of sailing. Sailors enjoy the simplicity of jib and main racing because it doesn't require a big crew or a lot of expensive gear. There are more and more races that now include non-spinnaker divisions so that a broader range of sailors and a bigger fleet can compete. Obviously, this breeds a whole new set of performance questions for getting downwind. A boat sailed correctly can make huge gains in a short time, the kind of situation we all daydream about, so it's really worth working on. As most boats turn downwind, past the tight reaching angles and into the broad reach and running apparent wind angles, a tremendous loss of power is felt. What's happening, aside from an associated drop in apparent wind speed, is that the wind flow across the main and jib does not stay attached as far aft, leaving the sails stalled. The boat is meant to be using a spinnaker, but with jibs and genoas only, you're stuck. You can try to keep the telltales flowing by moving the leads forward as you sail a broader angle, but eventually the sail gets too round and much of it stalls. Circulation around the main is better because you can use the vang to maintain shape, but the main alone won't give you the speed you need. Also, as you ease the main, it steals the wind from the genoa, and the genoa leech gets too close to the main and slows the airflow there. This is not a fast situation. The mighty Whisker Pole. Enter the Whisker Pole. Cruisers and passage makers have long known the value of sailing wing and wing and have learned to appreciate the stability of using a pole to keep the jib to windward. Likewise, snipes and other dinghy classes hold the jib clew out to windward on a pole in lieu of adding spinnakers to their class-prescribed sail arsenal. You'll often find your jib wanting to cross over to windward on its own when you're running. Letting it cross over, in fact, forcing it there, is a lot faster if done properly. When you put your jib or genoa on a pole out to windward, you reverse airflow across it and expose it to air that is undisturbed by the main. By pulling the pole aft, you can get the sail into a flatter configuration with normal airflow over both sides along most of the sail. This gives the sail power again and your boat speed will jump up. On larger boats, a spinnaker pole will work in this situation, but an adjustable whisker pole is better as its length can be adapted for different wind angles and different sized sails. Most fleets allow whisker poles to be extended to at least the length of the boat's J dimension, from the front of the mast to the bow, but you should check the rules for your local fleet. Some fleets allow poles as long as 1.5 times J, a big advantage on a tighter reach, especially if you have an overlapping head sail. The idea here is to set the sail with proper power, the right amount of depth, and trim it aft until the leech curls back toward the boat. At this point, just as with proper spinnaker trim, you're getting the most lift and the best speed out of the sail. This isn't startling to most sailors, but you might run into problems deciding when to pull the head sail over to windward and knowing exactly how to set it up when it gets there. To make these decisions simpler, let's first look at how the boat feels when it needs the boost of sailing wing and wing. The first clue that the sail needs wind is when the head sail sheets go limp, meaning the airflow has been greatly reduced and the sail isn't generating any power. To get more power, you can head up, refilling the sail with wind and building speed, or wing the head sail out to windward on the pole if staying low is necessary to get to the mark. There's usually an overlap of angles where the jib can work on either side, and you don't have to wait until the genoa sheet is hanging in the water to know that it's time to pole out the jib. When the jib is out on the whisker pole, it's generally more efficient than when it's trimmed to leeward, so your tendency should be to get it out there right away. But to be safe, and also to keep your tactical options open, it's tough to luff another boat when you have your jib on a pole to windward. You need to be sure there's a real opportunity for improvement before going for the pole. Sailing by the numbers. Take a look at this chart. You can develop some general strategic assumptions from this information. When it's windy and the boat is traveling at close to hull speed, struggling to set the Genoa to windward probably won't help you until you're way off the wind, say 150 degrees apparent. When it's really choppy and rough, you should probably postpone setting the pole a little longer too, as it would be hard to keep the sail from collapsing as your boat rolls around in the waves. In lighter winds, getting the Genoa across when the wind is 90 degrees apparent, if you have a long enough pole, and after that will help keep your boat speed up. The key to making the decision to wing the jib is to know what your speed should be. Every boat has an optimum speed for every point of sail. Velocity prediction programs generate polar diagrams for your boat that will show you how fast you should be going at given angles to the wind and wind speeds. These charts are quite common and are available through the designer or manufacturer of your boat or through US Sailing. If you really want to max out your off-wind speed, a practice session with polar information in hand and a few quick tests at different apparent wind angles with and without the head sail to windward should give you some hard data to work with in future races. Cruising canvas polars don't automatically assume you to be using a whisker pole at the broader angles, so through a little experimentation you can develop your own quick reference chart and keep it on deck to help take the guesswork out of when to set the pole and how fast you should be going. If you can show in practice that you can get closer to your target speeds with the pole out at a particular wind angle, your team can be ready to set the pole when you reach that angle in the next race. Setting the pole. You should also practice how to use the whisker pole. I believe the best whisker poles are the infinitely adjustable ones, as opposed to those with pins and stops that set the length. Being able to change the length of the pole with an internal purchase system makes it easier to adjust the sail for any wind angle. During practice, the pole needs to be marked for two lengths that fall within the rules for your fleet. Longer for close reaching, shorter for broad reaches and runs. When you decide to pull the sail across to windward, put the lazy, windward, head sail sheet into the outboard jaw, then extend the pole and attach it to the mast. Have the helmsman steer low for a short time to relieve some of the pressure on the sail, then ease the leeward sheet and trim in the windward one. A word of warning. With the sail out to windward, terrific pressure can be developed on the pole in strong winds, or if sailing close wind angles. Some whisker poles aren't built to withstand the pressure that a reaching course in strong winds can place on them, and could break or jump off the mast, causing damage or injury. If it's that windy, it would be just as fast to have the head sail trimmed to leeward anyway. So be smart and avoid situations that will put your pole under these loads. On broader angles, as you trim the pole back, it will tend to lift up as the sail fills. Then it will want to bounce up and down in puffs, and as the boat goes over, waves. A quick fix for this, which is especially nice on boats with limited hardware, is to loop the leeward sheet around the front side of the bow cleat. When you've brought the pole back to the position you like, tighten up the leeward sheet and use it as a downhaul. Of course, if you're on a long leg and have the proper equipment, a real foreguy should be rigged. But this technique is great for short courses. Keeping the pole at the right height is a must for good boat speed. It should be low enough to keep the top leash from twisting off around the headstay, but high enough to give the leash some give, allowing it to curl before collapsing. Different wind speeds, wave conditions, and sailing angles will require varying pole heights. If you're using a spinnaker pole as a whisker pole, you'll probably find the topping lift and foreguy useful for controlling pole heights, especially on larger boats over 35 or 40 feet. Big boats with larger, heavier whisker poles will benefit from a topping lift as well. When the pole is out, there should be constant dialogue between the driver and trimmers about changes in course, wind direction, and velocity. When the boat is turned, the sail must be adjusted. When there is a wind shift, the trimmer must respond. Just like a spinnaker, the jib out to windward must be constantly tended. The trimmer should watch the leach of the jib and keep an occasional curl, which shows the sail is working best. As far as sail selection goes, most boats will simply wing out the sail they're using for the upwind leg. If it's windy and you're racing upwind with a small head sail, like a Nota 3 jib, you could conceivably change to a larger genoa that will give you more sail area off the wind for a long leg. However, if the downwind leg is short and you have a small crew, it's probably more efficient to stick with your upwind head sail and avoid the complicated sail handling. Again, work on these decisions in your practice sessions and your choices will be clearer during the race. Jibing and stowing the pole. Depending on the length and type of pole you're using, it's usually not possible to do end-for-end jibes. On most boats, the pole will have to come off the mast and the forward end is passed through the fore triangle. To do this, the bowman, trimmer, and driver need to work together. First, ease the foreguy or release the lazy sheet from the bow cleat. Next, as the boat is turned into the jibe, the pole should come off the mast and be pulled back along the leeward side of the boat, probably between the shrouds and the mast. If one person has to do all the work on the bow, he'll have to place the pole on the deck and switch the sheet in the outboard end. Another crew member holding the pole can help, but you can also have a loop in the clew of the sail that the pole always stays hooked to, which will make things go a lot faster. When the sail is clipped to the pole on the new side, the pole should be pushed out and attached to the mast. Trim the sheet in a bit and then jibe the main. With this technique, the jib is full right away after the jibe, stabilizing the boat. If you jibe the main first, the jib won't come across as easily and the pole will be a bear to get over to the new side. Once the jibe is completed, reset the foreguy or leeward sheet and you're off. When it comes time to drop the pole and head upwind, the whole team needs to work together to help the bowman. First, ease the foreguy or take the leeward sheet off the bow cleat and tum the boat down slightly as you did on the initial set. This allows the bowman to get the pole off the mast without a lot of pressure on it. Bring the pole back along the leeward side and detach it from the clew of the jib. Make sure the pole is under the jib sheet so you can tack, then shorten and stow the pole. The trimmer should not let the sail cross to the leeward side until the pole is off the clew so the bowman doesn't get tangled, and the helmsman should avoid the temptation to head up until the pole is released and on the deck. Like any racing maneuver, following these steps gets the job done well. Rushing things can really screw it up. When planning for a leeward mark rounding, remember it's usually better to stow the pole too early and be ready for the next leg than to risk a bad rounding by pushing things to the last second. The whisker pole can make a huge difference in getting downwind under main and genoa. For new sailors, learning to fly the jib on the windward side is a great stepping stone to using spinnakers. For seasoned sailors racing short-handed in non-spinnaker races, it's another challenge and a tool you can use to work the boat to its best potential. How to use Jib Telltales. The little yarns on your head sail are the fundamental clues to your sailboat's sail trim, and different conditions require a different look. What your telltales are telling you: telltales flowing is good when underpowered. Telltales dancing, windward, can be good when overpowered. Telltales stalled, leeward, is bad and means not fast. Illustration, Tim Barker. Telltales are the most ubiquitous and simplest piece of equipment found on any sailboat, and even in this age of powerful race electronics, nothing is more reliable or true than these trusty yarns or fabric strips that serve as our guide to good sail trim. They're an effective teaching tool for beginning racers, especially those on the head sails. So let's focus on the basics of our jib telltales. There are two fundamental uses of telltales. We can use them as guides to steer by, as the lower luff telltales indicate how the oncoming wind is interacting with the front of the jib, or we can use them to help us trim the jib more effectively, using the telltales at the upper luff of the sail, and especially the leech telltales. It's true that sailboat races can be won through fast sail trim and precision steering, and using the telltales effectively can help you do both. They let us see how the wind is interacting with the jib, which is the info we need to trim the sail right and to steer the boat to windward most efficiently. Let's start with some advice on placement. New sails come with telltales, and these are usually well-placed and an appropriate material. But I will often adjust the location slightly and sometimes add a few more to help fill in the picture of how the wind is flowing across both sides of the sail. Wool telltales that might come with a new sail tend to get snagged on the sail stitching, so applying a light coat of McLube on the sail can help prevent that from happening. Luff telltales need to be a contrasting color, and it is good to have a different color on both sides of the sail. For most jib materials, using green for the starboard side and red for the port side works well. On black or darker colored head sails, white telltales work best. I like to have the port and starboard telltales offset slightly, with the starboard side about 1 inch higher than the port. I also like to use a row of 3 to 5 short telltales for the steering telltales because they provide a little more information about where the flow is attached to the front of the jib. For the other luff telltales, a single set per location is adequate. They should be placed 10 to 20% back from the luff. For luff telltales, I prefer to use light gauge wool for more sensitivity. Leech telltales tell us how the wind is exiting the jib. In particular, they are key indicators of leech stall, when the jib is trimmed too tightly for the wind to travel around it. The leech telltales might need to be a heavier material because they take a beating when tacking. Put them 15 to 30% down from the head. Bright red is a good color that contrasts with the sky. Now for the fun part, using your telltales to go faster. First, let's discuss using them to set up the jib for the conditions. Essentially, the luff telltales show us the sail's twist, and the leech telltales show us how tightly it is trimmed. In underpowered conditions, we're usually trying to have the upper and lower luff telltales break evenly, indicating that the wind is hitting the whole luff at an even angle for max efficiency. Use jib lead adjustments and jib sheet changes to achieve this. In overpowered conditions, we need to twist the jib to reduce heeling moment, so the inside upper telltales will not be flowing. This is okay, however, the leech telltales should never be stalled for more than a short time. Keep them flowing at least 80% of the time, even when underpowered. If they stall, you need to ease the jib sheet or move the lead aft to open the upper leech and recreate flow. Once the jib is set up correctly, we use the steering telltales to keep the jib boat at the right angle to the wind. As a basic guide, we want both windward and leeward telltales flowing straight aft in lighter wind, or when there are waves. In stronger wind and especially flat water, we can sometimes be inside the windward telltale, but never stall the leeward side for more than a second or two. There are some subtleties in reading the telltales. Full flow is when both windward and leeward yarns are flowing straight back. This will provide maximum efficiency when underpowered. Telltales dancing means the yarn is flickering or streaming up slightly. Having the windward steering telltales dancing can be good, especially when overpowered. Telltales stalled is when the telltale is streaming the wrong way, a definite no-no for the leeward telltales. Please like and subscribe as it really helps us to make more videos. Thank you.